Okay, this video is going to touch on the probing in the 2017 Screenset for UCCNC, and we're going to cover a little bit of the jogging as well first. The left side of the screen here, you got your jog fly out. If you don't want it to automatically pop out, you want to open it with a mouse click. You go to settings and then check the disable jog panel pop up on mouse over box. And then that'll keep it from accidentally popping out if you don't want it to do that. Normally you just slide the mouse over and it pops out, but that can be annoying at times, so you want to check this box and apply it and save. And then it takes a mouse click to open it up. So once we get in here, we have all our basic jog functions from UCCNC, but we changed the speed and distance. Instead of the predefined or the plus and up and down fixed increments, we have predefined increments on the 2017 Screenset that you can access from the function settings page. We have the jog percent here in the middle and the jog step increments. And what happens is the plus and minus will actually, when we're in continuous mode, they'll operate the continuous increment, their percent increments. And when we're in step mode, it'll go through the step increments. So we can see here we're at 100 and we'll go 5, 10, 25, 50, 75, 100 as we see right here. If we're in step mode, half, 1, and then we go back to 1,000th, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, 25, whatever that is, a quarter inch, half inch. So we go through the increments here and it'll automatically go through the proper one depending on which mode you're in. If you're in MPG mode, you'll get an error message in a pop-up window that you can't change the values while you're in those modes. One thing to make this a little easier is to assign hotkeys to these two buttons here, which I've done. Go to the I/O setup and hotkeys. Down in the corner here, I have them set up. The 2544. I'm going to have to put all these numbers in the manual so you can go through and set it. You can find it by using the edit screen and clicking on a button. It'll tell you the button number. I have the plus key, which is add, assigned to the plus button, and the minus key on my number pad assigned to the minus button. So I can, in the wrong mode still. So I can cycle through the increments with the keyboard, which makes it a little bit quicker to do. Rather than having to use the mouse to change, you can change them on the fly while you're jogging. So anybody wants to set that up, these are the two numbers here. 2544 is the plus, 2543 is the minus. You can assign any key you want by just clicking set and hitting the key, and then hit OK, and that'll set up your hotkeys. As always, apply and save to make them active and to remember them. One other thing in the jog before we move on to the probing is the jog safe probe button. On the standard UCCNC screen, this is on the run screen, but we moved it over here. What happens, I believe, is when this is active, anytime you're jogging and the probe hits something, it'll stop the machine from breaking your probe. So basically, it's a probe safety while you're jogging with the probe on or installed in the machine. LED on, LED off, so it's on or off, and that's it for that. So we move over to the all the probing is right here, the X and Y axis probing. This Z auto 0 and everything is on all the settings for the auto 0 are on the function settings page back here. But for probing, everything is done right here on the screen. So we have all these probe routines can do a double probe or a single probe. If you want to do a single probe, you're going to leave your slow feed rate at 0. And then it'll do one probe at the initial feed rate, and that's it. If you want to do a double probe, set an initial feed rate and a slow feed rate, and the slow feed rate will be the second probe. The probe distance is the maximum distance the probe will travel before it stops without hitting anything. And I think you could normally set that to a really high number, and I don't think it has any negative effects. Z clearance, I think, is only used when you're going to set the probe a cylinder from the outside, and it's used to lift it up and go over the top and come back down to the other side. XY clearance is where the probe will finish normally. After it hits an edge, it'll back off by the XY clearance amount. Probe diameter is your probe diameter of whatever you're using to probe with. If it's a tool, it'll be the tool diameter. If it's a probe, then it would be the tip diameter. Now note that this is a basic probing, some basic probing operations. There is no diameter compensation or tip compensation. So if you have a tip that takes a little bit of movement or a probe that needs a little bit of movement, it may not be as accurate as it could be because you need to, it's not calibrated for what the amount of distance it has to travel to trip the probe. But I think most people just use a tool for these basic operations, mostly for finding edges and things like that. Let's see the diameter. So auto zero checkbox. If that's checked, whenever you do a probe operation, it will set that axis zero position at the edge of where the probe makes contact. If you leave it off, it'll just display the position that it makes contact, but will not zero the axis. It will leave the coordinates the same as they already were. Probe edge lets you probe an edge and find an angle, find the angle of the edge if it's not perpendicular or parallel to an axis. The one-time edge probe, say you want to only probe an edge one time and then have it turn itself off. If you check one-time edge, after it makes the two probing moves along the edge, it'll uncheck the probe edge box. So just to keep you from accidentally keeping the probe edge on when you don't want to probe edges all the time. Edge length is the distance between the two probe points when you're probing an edge. So it'll probe in one spot, it'll move along the edge length, and then it'll probe it again. Oops, lost it. Pullback distance is mainly used, actually it's whenever you have a double probe move, or say inside of a pocket. It's the distance that it retracts back after it hits the edge, and before the second probe move is done. Or inside of say you're probing a cylinder and you don't have a lot of clearance, you don't want a very large pullback distance because it'll back up and hit the other side. So you can set that to whatever works best for you. Maybe it might take some trial and error, but I don't think it needs to be a very large number. Corner distance is when you're doing a corner probe. We'll touch on that in a minute here. Is the distance you're going to be within the corner from the corner. It must be, the corner distance needs to be greater than where you actually are relative to the corner so that it can move far enough to go around the corner. And then plate offset, say you're probing with a tool and you're probing a piece of wood, then it's similar to a Z touch plate. You can use a plate for the X and Y axis, and this would be your plate thickness. So say you hold a piece of a touch-off plate against the side of a material and probe to it, then that's your plate thickness. And then all these DROs up here basically are read-only, and these display all the probing results after probing. You can clear them anytime with the clear button. And most of these values will also be written to the status window when probing is complete, or during the probing operation actually. So the first, we'll start over here at the bottom. First operation would be a positive Y probe coming from the bottom of your part. Basically you click the button and it'll probe right up from wherever the tool's at, up to the side of the part. If you have a slow feed rate greater than 0, then it will back off and probe again at the slower rate and use that slower probe move to either set your 0 position or to tell you find the edge position. If you have probe edge checked, it will move. It'll do an initial probe, double probe if you have it set, and then it will move the edge length distance and then make another probe. So if you have your edge length set to 3, it's going to move in a positive X direction 3 units before it makes the second probe. Since X plus is to the right, it's going to move to the right. If you want it to move to the left, you can enter a negative distance for the edge length, and then it'll move in the negative direction. And there's not a whole lot to it. If there's if you have edge probing, it'll display the angle, and the angle is in, it's kind of hard to explain. Standard coordinate systems where rotation is counterclockwise. So if say you probe 2 points and the right point is higher than the left point, that would be a positive rotation. If the right side is lower than the left side, that would be a negative rotation. And it'll give you the angle in positive or negative degrees. And it'll give you also the distance between the 2 points, X or Y, how far the 2 points are from a horizontal or a vertical position. And basically all the four edge probing routines all function the same way. And then we go to the corners. Corners always probe clockwise. So if you do the X plus Y plus over here, it's going to do the Y move first. It's going to do either a single or a double depending on your slow feed rate. If it's 0, it just does a single. It'll move the corner distance towards the corner, which hopefully is past the corner. It'll actually move, I think, maybe 2 times the probe diameter plus the corner distance to give you a little bit more cushion, but enter a larger corner distance if you need to. It'll move to the corner, move up, and then it'll probe into the next edge. And basically it can set your 0 point at the corner. If you have auto 0 on, it'll set your 0 at the corner. If auto 0 is off, it'll just tell you, I think either way it'll tell you where that corner was in the current coordinate system before it auto zeros. And again, all 4 corners are the same, counterclockwise, or clockwise I mean. So in the upper left corner here, it'll be a X plus first, and then it'll go around the corner and do a Y minus probe. Then upper right will do a Y minus and then an X minus, and then the lower right will do an X minus and then followed by a Y plus. And that covers basically your perimeter probing. Then we also have a center finding for a cylinder, or a boss, however you want to call it. And off the top of my head, I don't know which way goes first. I should know that before I do the video. But it'll do the one side, it'll lift up the Z clearance amount, go over to the other side. And I believe that would be the edge length. I'm going to have to do a follow-up here probably I think it moves the edge length across your part and then comes back down. And then once done, it'll move over to it'll find the center after you do 2 edges, and then it'll move to the right, or left, I'm not sure again. And then it'll do the same thing on the 2 edges, finding the center for you. Do a test and error so you can see exactly what's going on. And I need to get a manual written up here, and in the manual will explain exactly where it starts and which way it goes once I get it written, when I can find a little bit of time here. So that covers their outside of a cylinder. And then next thing here, we have a center of a pocket or center of a cylinder, center of a pipe or a tube or a round pocket or a rectangular pocket. And again, I don't know which way it starts. I would think the X, but I'll have to put that in the manual. And it's similar to the outside. It'll probe to one side, Again, this, as with all of these, the slow feed rate is greater than 0. It'll do a double probe. So it probes to one side, then moves back to the other. Then it'll go to the center of those two sides, and then probe in the opposite direction. One side, then the other. And it'll finish up in the center. It'll give you your center position. It'll give you your length of X and your length of Y if it's a rectangular pocket. If it's a round pocket, then these two numbers won't be very valid because it depends on where you're at in the pocket. But it will give you the center, and that's mainly a center finding. And then we have an X pocket length and a Y pocket length, and similar to the other pocket, but only does one or the other. And that's pretty much it for the probing. It's pretty simple. It works the same as the Auto Zero. Same type of probe down, touch a plate, or if you have a real probe, it'll just touch down on your part, and that's it. Hopefully I can get the manual done and put some more detailed information here in the next week or so. Thanks for watching.